welcome. Welcome to God Talk. I just was with my mother down the street with some other people, and so they're beginning to find our shows, so I hope that you'll begin to be regular with us, find where in the schedule God Talk is showing up, and tell a few other people about it, where we just talk about the character of God and what God is all about. I'm Pastor Dan Smith, just transitioning into a new life and retirement, semi-retirement, because I still got a lot of stuff happening at Quiet Hour and here at LOBN, at La Sierra University, missions, but not tied ministry to a local church in quite the same way. We're talking about fear. We've been talking about that a week or two, various fears. Today, fear of losing control. I met some people in the Philippines. They're Americans, but they do ministry over there. And they're wonderful people, and they had a helicopter, and they have planes now too. And they fly up into the mountains where no one else can get there, or without hiking for days, and bring people out and bring food and do clinics up there. So I haven't kept up recently. Last I knew, I think they had a new helicopter now, but they had an old helicopter before, like 50 years old. Anyway, there was no room usually to put the sick person inside, so they would have to strap them in a gurney and put it on the skids down below. Well, one guy was unconscious. So they strapped him in his little, like a gurney or whatever that was, and strapped him into those skids and took off. 5,000 feet up, he wakes up. And what's going on? And looks over the side. And he has nothing underneath him for 5,000 feet. And he freaks out. And somehow wiggled out of where he was tied in and climbed up and opened the door and tried to get in and grab the wheel to go back down. He did not want to be up here anymore. So here's my poor friend trying to fly the helicopter and fight this guy off and get that under control and get landed before anything terrible happened. The guy wanted to be in control, did not want to be up here without having his feet on solid ground and his hand on the wheel. You listen to John Ortberg, who tells a story about being in a hot air balloon. And somehow he thought that the balloon side were pretty high, but it wasn't. It's down like here. Didn't feel very secure. Then I found out that the guy piloting the balloon had only been doing it a few weeks, was kind of out of the work hippie, and this was not very encouraging. So his wife said to him, you mean we're up in a balloon with someone who really doesn't know what he's doing and has never flown this particular balloon before? And anyway, yeah, it looks like that's where we are. And so one of the friends said, you're a pastor, do something religious. So he said, I took up an offering. Not easy when you don't feel you have control, you have a grip on things, and your feet on solid ground. And the Bible says in Matthew chapter 14, about 3 a.m, Jesus came to the disciples walking on water. When the disciples saw him, they screamed in terror, thinking he was a ghost. But Jesus spoke to them once, it's all right, I am here, don't be afraid. Then Peter says to him, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you by walking on the water. All right, come. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. So lots of people have preached on this. Ortberg has chapters about this in his book. If you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. So it starts with that. Got to get out of the boat. So God, he interprets this as God is always asking ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Anybody can sit in the boat. It takes somebody special to get out of the boat and do something. And God is calling regular people, not Jesus, not superstars. Jesus is already doing it. asking Peter now, walk on water. So now you come that moment, you got to let go of the boat. What does a boat stand for? Boat is whatever you are holding on to that gives you a sense of stability, makes you feel safe, makes you feel under control, comfortable, whatever makes you not want to get out of the boat to do something else and try something new, to go be with Jesus. Jesus is out there, not here. He's there. So the boat is whatever keeps you from going out to trust Jesus and putting all your life on him. I was a young pastor a long time ago. We had an evangelist in my church, and they somehow were involved in casting out demons. I knew nothing about this. And I'm the pastor, so they finally gave me the respect to say, come join us when we have a demon deliverance, exorcism, whatever you want to call it. So I'm in my own office. They take this guy, it's 11 o'clock at night because we already had our evangelistic meeting. And they talk to him and read Bible texts and quotations, and then they lay him down, head on a pillow, and they begin to call the demons to come out. Now, I did not know what was going to happen. I don't know what it means when demons come out. We're going to see something, hear something? I don't know what was going to happen. So I don't know what to do. I grabbed the couch. I'm next to the couch. And then, I figured that out. The couch probably is not going to help me. Try to hold on to my faith. But I didn't have much solid to hold on to. What is it that gives you stability? Maybe it's money. Maybe you just feel a little better when you have enough money. There's enough money in the account, you can kind of withstand stress financially. But if you're hurting financially, then faith is gone and you're rocking. It might be people. It might be your family. You've got this family. I've had families in my church system. We have the Tongan clan and Filipino clan, and they support each other. Vietnamese. You're in trouble. You have a family to rely on, connections who will help you out. A friend of mine from Tonga told me he's going to go to Tonga here in a few weeks, and he hopes to inherit some land. He's Tongan. And he said, Pastor Dan, I'll give you a place to put a little cabin on my land if I get this land. I said, what makes you think you're going to get the land? He said, I have connections. Knows somebody, has a relative in the office somewhere. He feels solid because he has this network of people. Maybe it's your little small group, a group of people that you belong to, but it gives you a sense of safety. That's your boat. Whatever gives you a sense of safety and security and comfort. But we learn from this passage, God is always asking people to do something a little scary. Come on out. Don't just sit there in the boat. Come out here with me. It's going to be a little scary. And I can tell you 1,000 stories of that. Step out of your boat and now walk on water. Every time someone says, come, help us build a church. How much? $50,000. Where am I going to get $50,000? One of the last things I did in my church was to raise money for a kitchen. And there were those who told me, don't worry about it, Pastor Dan, you're getting ready to retire. You don't have to carry that. But all the kitchen people came and said, Pastor Dan, we don't want to wait 2 more years. We need a new kitchen. So it's a little scary. I said, okay, God, we'll try. We got it done by God's grace. I'm very thankful to my church members and God. It's always a little scary when I have a project that is beyond what I have the power or skill or talent or network to do. How is God going to do this? Being retired. You don't get a check anymore like that. What will I do? Who will I be when I'm not a pastor of a church anymore? It's a little scary. Come out and walk on the water. You're going to write a book. You're going to start a business. Go to graduate school. Don't have the money. What are you going to do? You got a health issue. Got to trust God, trust the system. I was in high school in Singapore. I had a roommate who wanted to take flying lessons. What possessed me, I do not know, but he invited me to come when he was learning to land. Why would I do that? I don't know why I did that. So I sat in the back while this 16-year-old kid, my idiot roommate, is trying to learn to land a plane. And we would come in, you know, he trained all of it, practiced it. Okay, do this trim and do this, 5, 6 steps. But somehow it never came out right, and we'd be using up the runway, and we'd be way up too high, and finally the guy would shout, "Let me have it!" And the kid would let go, and this guy would take it and save us out. Another time we were too high, and he said, "Get down." So all of a sudden, he did something. We just down onto the ground, bounced up in the air. I was no good. So the next time, he came in too low. Up, 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 bring it up. After 2 or 3 of those things, I said, "I'm out. Get me out of this plane." So they pulled off and let me out, and I kissed the ground. Better on solid ground. Don't want to take a chance, live risky like that. Sometimes it might be fear of embarrassment. You're going to be embarrassed. It's not going to work. As a young pastor, someone invited me after her boyfriend had died. Terrible truck accident. She thought he was coming to ask her to marry him. I do not know if that's true. We never will find out because he died. But he died, 2 trucks coming at 100 miles an hour at each other. And while I was at camp meeting, he was buried in Walla Walla, which was 8, 9 hours away from where I was pastoring in Oregon. I got back home, and she called me, went to her house, and she said, "I know you're a pastor of faith. I want you to go, and we'll drive together up to Walla Walla, my few of us, and we're going to go out to that grave, and you're going to pray, and you're going to bring my boyfriend back to life." I said, "I am?" That's what Jesus did. If we have enough faith, we can do it, Pastor Dan. Great day. No one taught me that in the seminary. I haven't heard anyone else doing that. The idea that we should drive 9 hours, go out to this cemetery with new grave, start praying and shouting about come forth like Jesus did. So, what if it doesn't work? She's going to look at me like, "I thought you had faith, Pastor Dan." Come on. And what if it just stays right there, the dirt and the stone, and nothing moves? Then I thought, what if it does move? What if that does begin to break loose, and here he comes walking out of there? This guy was dead 5 minutes ago. We're going to hug him? You're going to put him back in the car? We're going to drive together for 8 hours with a guy that just died and woke up? That was a little weird, too. So I was scared of being embarrassed. And she finally changed her mind, and I never had to do it. But I did not want to drive 9 hours to stand there and be proven as a fake because I couldn't raise a dead man to life. What are you going to do? There is this moment of fear. When someone asks you to do something, you feel God calling you to do something that is out beyond your comfort zone, talk to those people. Talk to that one. Put some money into that investment and make that happen. Whatever it is, start a relationship. I want you to go there and ask that person out. It's fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being embarrassed, fear. But you think about it. All through the Bible, it's those moments of fear that became transformative, powerful moments. And the miracles happen and great things happen. God says to Noah, "Go build a boat in the middle of a desert." Never heard of rain? Never seen a boat? Go build a boat. But he saves the world because now there's some people still there. Moses, take up that rod and then pick up the snake by the tail and do miracles and set my people free and lead them across the desert. Whoa. Elijah, put 2 altars there in front, bring all the 800 priests on the other side, and then you and we'll have a showdown to see who is really God here. What if it doesn't work? What if you pray and God doesn't choose today to put the fire down? Not easy. What about the priests? When you told them to put their feet into the water, you're standing there, maybe it's 20 feet deep, who knows? And you're carrying the ark, and God says, put your foot first. And God, no, you put the ground first. It's like Elijah. Elijah would say, maybe you and I, God, go practice this fire thing off to the side. Let me be sure that when I pray, you're going to do it. Maybe those priests said, God, you open up the ground, and then we'll go across. Give us a little something to be sure. God says, no, you step. Show me you have faith. I'll be there. And they did. But it's almost always these moments. Jehoshaphat, surrounded by enemies, goes to the temple and lays it before God. And look where we are, God. What are you going to do? And God says, go and line up. But don't put the military people in front. Put your choir up in front. Well, that's a good idea, God. That's really going to help. Have these guys singing hymns up in front, God. That's a really good idea. You come down here and you sing in the front, God. I want you to do that. I want you to know that it's me, not you. Always a moment of fear. But without faith, none of those things would happen. There would have been no God crackling fire down. There would have been no Moses leading 2 million of people across the desert. None of the miracles, none of the power, no people in the promised land. No fire down from heaven. And Jehoshaphat and his country would have been destroyed. If they didn't face that moment of fear and said, okay, God, you want to put the choir first? We'll put the choir first. Show their faith. And God does a miracle. And they come out in the morning and every single person is already dead. And God marches 2 million people across the desert into the promised land. Because of those moments of faith. I was always afraid, growing up, what God was going to ask of me if I were to become fully devoted. I can remember being 18. Graduated from high school back in Michigan. A whole group of us went to Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to sell books. We call it colporteuring. Halfway through the summer, having a tough time, not easy to sell big, thick religious books. These were not children's storybooks. Hot sun all day, every day, big briefcase. Someone asked us one night, if you were to die tonight, do you know that you would have eternal life? Never heard of that. Father's a pastor. I missed that somewhere. All I knew was fight and scrape and try to keep all the commandments and do the best you can and hope that somehow when your name comes up in the judgment, you're on a good swing right then and hope that they catch you at a good time. Anyway, to make a long story short, I knelt down on that Saturday night and decided to give my life to God in a way that I had not before. And I don't know where I got this, but somehow I thought I had to give stuff up in order to get this. I don't know where I got all this. I thought maybe I'd have to give up the grades that I've been having. I was one of the top students in the school most of the time, small school. That was very important to me. I wasn't the tallest athlete or anything else, but the one thing I could do is I could study. And I studied, and I was usually in that group fighting for the grades. And that was part of my identity, that everyone knew that Dan Smith was one of the ones getting top grades. And for some reason, I thought I had to give that up. Let it go. And give that to God. Then I thought maybe I'd have to give up sports. I was not a great athlete, but in the group that got chosen, I played on all the teams at our little school. I was on the ping pong and the badminton and the football and basketball. I was one of the athletes. And I thought maybe I have to give that up. Maybe God wants me to not have any more of that. Had a pretty blonde girlfriend. I thought, well, maybe I got to give that up. Maybe God want me to marry somebody horrible, ugly, whatever. I do not know where I got this picture of God, that God would want to make my life miserable. But my whole life was on, I got to give up fear of losing control. I wanted to be in control of who I would marry and being good at sports and good at grades, whatever. And God said, give it to me. If you want to walk on water, let go of the boat. Give it to me. He doesn't want to take it, but he wants you to trust him. Let go of the boat. How do you learn to walk on water? Well, a few quick thoughts. Number one, remember what God has done before. We've talked about that in other weeks. Peter had already heard the voice of God before. He had one miracle after the other. I made a list that I could. He saw at the baptism, he heard the voice of God. He had seen Jesus heal a leper. He saw him heal a blind man, feed the 5,000, change the water into wine, cast out demons, and calm the storm. So Peter's already heard God do this. So if God did all of that, maybe I can walk on water if he asked me to. Number two, if God has done it for somebody else, he can do it for me. Sometimes we get the idea that certain things are just for the spiritual superstars. The people who are the spiritual giants, okay, that's them. That's Billy Graham. That's Mark Finley. That's the best of the best. Don't think he's going to do it for me. No, if he did it for them, he can do it for you too. Number three, can you trust him? Can you trust the pilot in the balloon story? Are you ready to say, I trust you, God? I had a lady that had been helping me for years financially with all my mission projects. She had some stock, and when a need would come once a year, I would call her, can you help some? She would sell some stock and send the money to me. And we'd done a lot of good together around the world. A few things at my church, mostly around the world. Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia. I called her to tell her thank you and give her a report on something, and I think I was going to tell her about my next trip, whatever it was. Sister-in-law got on the phone and said, I'm so sorry, Pastor Dan. She died. She died. I knew she was going to have a heart surgery, but she seemed to say that it was relatively minor, not a problem. She died. It's over. So she's my friend. I'm sorry for my friend. I lost my friend. But what's going to happen to my projects? I relied on her. I'm retiring. I assumed she would be part of my foundation and my support. I won't have a church congregation anymore to sort of do these things collectively. I only had a few people, and now one passes away. And I was a little down. I had to fight the battle of faith, and a couple of my friends came and said, Pastor Dan, God's not going to stop. God has other people. God has other ways to make these trips go, these projects go. Trust him. True story, that's not in my notes, but true story, that next Sabbath, we were on our way to Vietnam, and God had something lined up for me. One of my members came, Pastor Dan, and here was a person. And they said, Pastor Dan is going to Vietnam. Can you help him? And he said, what's the number? What do you need? I wasn't ready for that. Talked about a couple churches that I'd heard needed to be built. And by that Tuesday, he had given my church member $50,000 for Vietnam. I said, okay, God, I repent. You want me to walk on water? I'll try to walk towards you. Scary. It's an old story from basketball. I was a Chicago Bull person for a long time. Michael Jordan was playing basketball. They were in the finals. Came down to the last game, and he's trying to do it all by himself. Fly over and try to score against 1-on-5. And at the huddle, Phil Jackson said, don't try to do it by yourself. Who's open? Jordan says, Paxson, short, white, 6'2" guard. Paxton's open. Find him. Everyone's coming to you. Find him. Jordan would fly toward the basket, draw all the defense to Paxton. Scored 20 points. Won the game. Keep your eyes on something. And you trust him. Trust him, Coach said. Finally, of course, keep your eyes on Jesus. Whenever I've been afraid, it's always because I look away. How am I going to do that, God? Where's the money? I'm looking at people. I'm looking at me. I'm not looking at Jesus. What is Jesus going to do? It's easy to look at the negative people who say, we don't have enough money. We've never done it that way before. That's not going to work. I've already tried that. It's going to rain. Whatever. It's always something. And none of that is lifting your eyes on Jesus. Yes, there are times for people to ask hard questions. If you're going to build a building, you want people to count the cost. Yes, 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 yes. But at some point, we have to say, if you're going to walk on water, your eyes have to be on Jesus. And whenever I am struggling, is because I took my eyes off Jesus. It's His project, His church. He said, I will build my church. Keep your eyes on Jesus. I had somebody mess with my head for a while. I won't give you any details. I want anybody to think who it is. But somebody began to mess with my head for a while, began to put negative into me. I wasn't any good. I wasn't doing this right. I wasn't doing this right. Won't give you any more details than that. Years ago. And I was beginning to be under a dark cloud. Now, I'm not usually like that. Usually I'm pretty up by nature. And I finally had to have a breakthrough. I finally had to say, I am not going to let this person be the one who dictates who I am and my sense of self. And I'm going to lift my eyes on Jesus, and I'm going to take my self-esteem and who I am and how I feel about myself from Jesus and not from this voice of darkness in my life. And I had to win a victory over that. Like Peter had to. Keep your eyes on Jesus. You need to look at yourself or look back at the guys in the boat. He sank. Keep your eyes on Jesus. We got to be done here. Do you have to be able to walk on water to be saved? Or is that only for the spiritual elite and to do miracles, but you don't have to walk on water? Can we just be very, very clear? Non-Christians can ride in the boat. It doesn't take anything to ride in the boat. Non-Christians can win at sports. Non-Christians can do music. Non-Christians can do many things. But they can't walk onto the boat and be where Jesus is. That takes faith. You have to walk out of the boat and walk on the water if you want to be where Jesus is doing magic around the world for God. And you got to get out of the boat. You go to the saints in Revelation 15 who have victory over the beast and are singing the song of Moses and the Lamb. It says all of them are walking on the water. This is not a few little elite Billy Graham people walking on the water. It is the whole body of faith who are victorious over the beast and are walking on the water and the sea of glass. God expects all of us to hear the call. Whatever your calling is, I can't tell you when Jesus will call you, to let go of the boat and go to Him and do something extraordinary for God. God is calling all of us to go. They talk in sports about being in the zone when you just can't miss. Someday we're all going to be in the zone where we're just eyes locked on Jesus, walking on water. This is God Talk. See you next week.